Play.
Hello, everybody. We have a familiar face with us today, this afternoon, or this evening as it is in Central European time. But it has been a few months since we touched base with David. And, well, 2023, let's talk about that as a whole to begin with, Dave. It's been a bit of an up and down year. Is that fair for you and Liam?
I think it's really been mostly an up year. I think the down part is the fact that he got injured. So in the final of BL, the wrist, which had been hurting him all week, but in the final really broke down. And he took 3 weeks to try and get it ready for Banja Luka. And we went there, and it pretty much held up for 2 matches. And then in the third match, it started to hurt again. Plus, he started to feel his ab a little bit there. So we took a longer time out, a month, and came back this week to Tunisia. And yeah, I mean, the conditions were very difficult. It was very windy. We'd had a lot of rain. And yeah, it really was not one of his best matches for sure.
So how is the wrist right now?
Basically has the same problem as Emma Raducanu, and the surgeon has said with a situation like this, it's all about whether you can manage it and the level of pain that you can manage. Or it's pain or discomfort. And if you can keep it at a level where you can play, you're not going to do any further damage. You just can either play on it or you can't. And right now, Liam feels that he's doing a lot of different wrist exercises and managing it. And the discomfort level is easily manageable for him. So it's not affecting his play. It's not perfect, but it's definitely not stopping him from playing full out. And I think.
Go on, David.
Sorry, I think just on obviously, although Tunisia was not a good match and having been out for 4 weeks, the good thing is the body came through intact.
Does the timing of this have an impact on decisions regarding the injury? For example, we've got the French Open qualifiers beginning at the beginning of next week, and we've also got Wimbledon not that far away. Home territory, also familiar territory in terms of success last year, being Diego Schwartzman among others. Does that play an impact in terms of the physical situation with Liam right now?
I mean, certainly it's not a time of year that he wants to miss. And I think the other thing that's even more prevalent is the fact that he's not defending a lot of points, and he wasn't on the clay. And unfortunately, he's basically going to play 3 tournaments on clay. That's it, which is a shame, because after BL, he was in a very, very good position to move his ranking, forward towards, top 100. And, through the whole summer, he really has an opportunity. So in terms of timing of when this has happened, it's never good timing to have an injury. But for the window of opportunity that he has had for the clay, but now for the rest of the clay, the French and grass and the hard courts in America, is quite a big opportunity. So if he can manage it throughout the summer, that would be advantageous. He might be able to manage it for the rest of his career. But if it does break down again, then we're going to have to look at wrist surgery.
Yeah. What's the situation? When is Liam going to be playing his first round? It'll either be Monday or Tuesday. Am I right?
That's correct. They split the draw, so it depends where he comes out in the draw, which they do, I think, at 3:00 tomorrow.
Okay. in terms of other big names or familiar names in the qualifying draw, of course, Jan-Lennard Struff is someone that would immediately spring to mind, but because he shot up the rankings,
Yeah.
he's a barrier, if you like, that won't be in Liam's potential way, which is, I'm sure, a relief to everyone, just in terms of how well he's been playing recently, Jan-Lennard. What other names perhaps could and should we look out for in the qualifiers?
I think Reedy, if he plays well,
Yeah,
who Liam played earlier in the year, is
in Australia, right?
dangerous. Yeah. You know, I would say, really and truthfully, any player ranked between 110 and 200, 230, which is sort of the cut 240. I don't think anybody there can be termed as an easy match. I don't think it really exists. So I think you have to just go in and see everybody as dangerous, but including Liam. Liam is very dangerous for anybody as well. So we don't really look at the names that are there, because you just have to play who shows up on the day. And, they could be ranked 110 and play like, 250 on the day, or they could play like 50 on the day.
Yeah.
So, the margins are very, very small, as you well know. So it's not about picking certain names, because that never works. And if you pick certain names and you have to play them, kind of set this thing in your head that, they're very dangerous. I think you just got to focus on what you're doing and the fact that, you're dangerous.
Give us we're just going to go off a sidetrack just very quickly, David. What are your thoughts? Were your thoughts a couple of days ago when Rafa Nadal made the announcement that he won't be there? So again, another a potential first round opponent, of course, but that's a few matches away that won't be happening. Did that come as a surprise to you? Is it what you'd been hearing, that it was likely that Rafa was A, going to miss the French Open, and B, perhaps the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, it was no surprise to me at all. Once he hadn't played Madrid or Rome, I didn't think there was anywhere in the world that he would just show up for the French and try to play that without playing the lead-up tournament. Clay is the most difficult surface to adjust to. Obviously, he's a master at it, but even all that he's achieved, he would need a few matches to really come in and feel like he's got some confidence to do well here. And I don't think he wanted to come here and I don't think it's possible for him to play at all anyway. But if it even was remotely possible, I don't think he would do it, because he would want to always play good tennis at the French.
Okay, back to Liam. Probably the casual observer will be aware of Liam's prowess on the grass, also on the hard courts, obviously making the Australian Open first round last year, but also having a good run at Wimbledon. What about clay? Because I think the French Open was his first major qualification, am I right?
It was indeed, yes. So 2020, the COVID year.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 20 or 20 or 21.
The first COVID year, or the main COVID year, was 2020. The one in winter.
Yeah. It's when they played the October.
Yeah.
Yeah, October tournament. Yeah, that was it. And certainly coming to that, he had a pretty good clay court season and had built nicely for it. But it did show that he could play very good tennis on clay, and I still believe that's the case.
Yeah, what's his movement like? I mean, the sliding, for example, is the first, and again, a casual observer thought is that, is he comfortable moving on the clay compared to other surfaces?
Yes, he is comfortable. I mean, it's taken, I'd say, the practice this week for him to really get comfortable with the movement. But yesterday I started to see it really taking shape, and then today as well. much more comfortable with. And it's really just, getting your clay court feet. It's not that he, can't do it in any way. It was just you just get the feel of it and the timing of it, because it's very easy to move and kind of hit the ball and slide after, which will make you slow getting back.
Yeah.
And it's that timing of a slide to, play the ball and then be able to push back at the end of the slide without going on further.
With other players that you've coached down the years, are there one or two that stood out for you as a coach, that your player who was really, really good as a mover on the clay? And maybe if you feel comfortable, David, you might highlight one or two examples of people who didn't move quite so well.
I think Martin Lee was a very good mover on all surfaces and definitely on clay. And I think, in hindsight, he probably could have achieved more on the clay than he did.
Mm-hmm.
But he was certainly very, very comfortable on the stuff. Andrew Richardson actually moved for a big guy surprisingly well on the clay.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a struggle for him because obviously being so tall. Flex, as we call it, his nickname is, had very, very good feet around the ball. So anything around the ball, he's very, very good feet around the ball. And of course, clay gave him a little bit of time to get the big hits in. So, I think if he had believed more about how he could play on the clay, I remember a guy called Magnus Larsson. I don't know if you remember him.
Yes, I do.
Made semis of French. Not a great mover, but he used the slowness of the court to really get behind the ball and hit a really big ball, and did very, very well on it. And I think Flex was more in that sort of type of player on the clay.
Okay. How is Liam's mood at the moment, bearing in mind, I said an up and down year. As you say, it's mostly been up, especially winning the Challenger, but I probably also had Australia in my mind. We're now at the second major of the year, and we are around 48 hours away from potentially his first match. Is he relaxed? You're in Paris right now, right?
Yes, we are. Yes.
And when did you arrive?
Airbnb. We arrived on Friday.
Airbnb. Okay. Yeah. And are you close to Roland Garros? Are you in the neighborhood?
20 minutes. 20 minutes in the car, 15 on a good run.
Do you get do the ATP or French Open, do they provide transport for you? Or
yes.
Do you okay.
No, the transport is excellent here. Really very good.
Does that vary from tournament to tournament? In the big tournaments, let's say the 1000s and the majors, are they all pretty good for you in terms of getting you picked up, or do you sometimes get qualifiers going by underground?
I think for coaches, definitely Australia and the French are the best, because they will allow you to take a car on your own without having to go with a player. And especially, we're staying together here, but if you're staying in a separate place, that's a real pain for the coach, and I don't understand it, because Wimbledon and the US Open will not. The US Open do have buses into, the city center, but if you're not staying in the city center, then you can only ride with the player, which I think is a little bit stingy, really.
Yeah.
Whereas these two majors and most of the 1000s and the bigger tournaments, in fact, most of the 250s as well, are very good with their transport. They have some flexibility, and they're quite reasonable with it. Say Wimbledon and US Open are very, very strict and restrictive.
Yeah, I have one or two sort of thoughts as well on this, and I do think that the stinginess is considering we know how flush the sport is, and certainly potentially could be as well. it's unbelievable some of the things that occur. And I don't just mean ATP or WTA. I also mean sometimes the tournaments, charging journalists 50 quid for a desk or whatever. And you're just thinking, listen, you making a few thousand quid off a desk every year is not going to make or break the tournament. But what might is if journalists stop turning up, Also in Madrid, I remember the cost for a lunch there was about 35, 40 quid, depending on what currency you talk about, or 38 euros, I should say. And I'm just thinking, that's the kind of thing that will turn a newspaper or a small outlet away from sending their journalists there when they see the food bill at the end. And I don't know. I think sometimes tennis cuts off its nose to spite its face.
I wouldn't disagree. I think occasionally, stuff happens that, I think, laundry is a big one. Some tournaments charge a hell of a lot for laundry. Whether it's the player, sometimes the players will get it and the coaches won't get it. And then some of them will charge a reasonable amount. But either way, these are not sums of money that are going to make or break tournaments. So I think that's one of the things as my position on the ATP coaches committee is trying to push for that there's a protocol across the board that certain things are provided and that's it, and it's very interesting what you say about the journalists, because I think that's a big point. I think journalists are there to cover the sport and to promote the sport and write about the sport and give column inches to the sport.
Yeah.
And that's worth a lot to the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be interested if golf is the same or other sports are the same. I think my instinct would say no, but I don't know.
Yeah, golf is a good question because it's probably the one, golf and tennis, individual sports, and of course you have doubles too in tennis, but the money and then perhaps the clientele can be quite similar. 50% of a golf crowd probably aren't necessarily golf connoisseurs, and same with tennis as well. 50% do know their stuff, but I think it's a good one. What I would say though is football. I think tends to be a little bit more generous, let's say, laying on food for journalists and that kind of thing. Never mind charging them 40 quid, etc. Also probably embracing certain new forms of media too. But listen, that's perhaps for another podcast. But that's interesting stuff, what you were saying about the laundry and some of the charges that occur there. Okay, let's get back to Liam more specifically. His calendar right now, obviously we've got the French Open qualifiers beginning on Monday, and of course you'll need to book an Airbnb, David, for 3 weeks because we know Liam's getting to the final. But beyond the French Open, what's the grass courts calendar, if you like?
It's pretty similar every year, depending on how he does the French. It depends on whether he plays or doesn't play Surbiton. Then there's the Nottingham Challenger, followed by Queen's, Eastbourne, and Wimbledon.
What's the Queen's situation? Does he get a main draw sort of? What's the score there?
No, nothing's guaranteed. It depends. I think Carl Edmund's going to need a wild card. I think it also depends on how people have done, and so you wait and find out. But I think regardless of whether he gets a main draw wild card or not, he'll play qualifying at Queen's.
Okay, great.
Luckily enough, the last couple of years he's been able to get the wild card, but it's never guaranteed. And a wild card is a gift, so you shouldn't expect one. If it comes, that's a nice addition.
Yeah, right. What's his record at Queen's like? You'll have to inform me.
He's played some very good matches there, but he's not won a lot. He lost to Cilic last year, 7-5 in the third.
Is that first round, was it?
That was first round, yes.
Okay, that gave a little bit of a clue then to what we were going to see at Wimbledon.
Yes. And then I'm trying to think. Year before we lost to there.
Cilic last year, I think, had a good run. If
You
memory
did,
serves
yeah. I think
right.
he made final actually.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah. So, you get Cilic first round, and that's a tough first round.
Yeah. And the year before, I'm trying to think. I know one year he lost to Shapovalov.
If that was the year before, that would be the year that
Yeah.
Shapovalov got to the semis at Wimbledon 2021.
Yeah. So that was a tough draw, and I don't know, Fels. I can't. I'll have to look up.
But for Liam, in playing in the UK, is he someone that tends to thrive on the support rather than find it difficult? I mean, some of his best results obviously have come in the UK, even if they've come in defeats, as you mentioned, to Cilic and Shapovalov.
Yes, I mean he likes support. He really does like crowds. He likes a big court. He likes a noisy crowd. So yeah, I would say it's he's very comfortable and he's got some very good memories, especially at Wimbledon. Not only as an adult, but obviously making the finals as a junior as well. So his pedigree at Wimbledon is very good, and the target has to be making a second week at Wimbledon.
Okay. That's a good target. I mean, last year was third round. Yeah, if he could better that this year, that would be amazing. And of course, this year, David, I'm sure you and Liam are both pleased and relieved about the point situation at Wimbledon.
Yes. I think sadly they weren't there last year, but of course that opens the opportunity for this year because you're not losing any points either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the right decision, and tennis, like any other sport, has to carry on operating regardless of a war somewhere or not.
And his current ranking, where are we at right now?
I think it's about 136.
Okay, so he's sort of, despite the injury, he hasn't dropped too many spots.
No.
I think he get to something like 120 or something like that when he won that challenger. I'm not quite sure, but
he's in the 120s.
Yeah, exactly. But he's yet, of course, in his career anyway, as far as I'm aware, to make the top 100, right?
116 is the highest.
116. So, yeah, I mean, it's a figure, but that must be another part of the 2023 goal, right?
Yes. I think as I said earlier, the opportunity is now. The next 6 months. We're really till the end of the year is the opportunity, because he was out injured for a large part of the end of last year as well. So he played Tel Aviv and qualified and made quarterfinals of the 250 there, which is very good. But then he got hurt again, tried to play Bratislava, which was back end of the year, and lost a tough one to Matra there, and that was pretty much the year done for him. So if he can stay healthy this year, then this is the year to step through.
Indeed. I've got a question for you from someone in the live chat, and they're not quite sure if how broad an answer or how big an answer you can give, but just talking about some up and coming British players, and in particular Jack Draper. How far do you think Jack can go, for example?
I mean, you never know. Jack also has to stay healthy because he's had some injury issues. But in terms of quality, I see Jack being a top 20 player. I think
top
he's
20.
I think he's a real talent.
Indeed,
and he's already proved it. I mean, what is he? Being as high as 40 in the world or 50?
Yeah, I think he has. Yeah, I think he has.
So I mean, he's already up there. I just the weight of shot, everything that he has. I mean, just a great prospect for British tennis.
I know we've got the French Open qualifiers coming up on Monday and Tuesday, or beginning on Monday and Tuesday, but we have tended to talk a lot away from Paris, actually. But I am interested. I've got one more sort of question for you, which is, What is that like when you've been playing on clay for, so not just with Liam, but any of the players that you've coached down the years, when you've been playing on clay for 4, 6, 8 weeks or whatever that block can be for the player, depending on fitness, etc. What is it like when they first step onto the grass? Is it a really tricky transition? Because for me, it's kind of odd that we also have a very mini clay court season reappear after the grass court season. And I would have thought most players, David, do just like that consistency of surface, and maybe that first day on the grass is a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that's also underestimated about grass is the movement. I think most players, when they first step onto the grass, are going to get a little bit stiff because you're moving with a much lower base.
Okay.
The ball is bouncing in general lower, so everything is played at a lower center of gravity, and that's pretty tough on the legs to start with. The other thing is the timing of the hit is very different from the clay, so it definitely takes I'd say a good hour just to get a feel of the court, and I think for players that really like the grass and are comfortable in the grass, like Liam and most British players, that transition's a lot quicker. They get the feel very quickly. I think with some clay quarters, they never really get to grips with the grass or like it at all, because it is again very different moving as well to the clay. So yeah, I think that's what makes the tennis so difficult. It's in some ways almost like a different sport, when you're playing on a clay to grass, which also says what Bjorn Borg did when he won 3 back-to-backs. It's quite phenomenal.
I just want to give a quick mention to your podcast, David, as well. I've got that shown up on the screen. Make sure those of you out there who are tuning in, give David's podcast a listen and a subscribe. David, what have you been talking about most recently on your podcast?
My podcast is not, really centered around tennis. It's more about on mindset lessons, perspectives on life, and but if you are a competitive person, these are messages that certainly have helped me and helped players that I've worked with, and help clients that I have that are outside of sport. So it's really just it's offering people different perspectives, and they can take them or leave them. It's my stuff that's worked for me or worked for people that I've worked with, and or life lessons that I think help me feel happy about the way I live my life, and to be content with what I'm doing. So it's really just my experience being put down on a podcast, and they're very short, 4 to 6 minutes long, and that's something that I think anybody can just get a mini lift or a different perspective to reflect on, and hopefully can help them in something that they might be struggling with.
With the mental side of tennis, from my perspective as a fan, if you like, the two things that strike me in tennis compared to lots of other sports that I think make it a big mental challenge is, first of all, it's an individual sport. But secondly, so there's nowhere to hide. Like in football, in a team sport, you can just give the ball to another, teammate, and you cannot call for it if you like. But there's nowhere to hide. The other thing as well in tennis is again in something like football, you can be really nervous, but you can get a bit lucky. And of course, that can be the case in tennis. But basically, your body could be shaking when you're about to take a penalty. Okay. and you can
Yeah.
still score because you can just put your foot through it, right? You know, you
Yeah.
just hit it as hard as you can, and actually probably you will still score because of the odds on that.
Yeah.
But there's that in a sport such as darts, snooker, tennis, where you need to be pretty calm and you need to have a pretty steady hand. There's just nowhere to hide. Is there anything I'm missing, or am I underplaying something, or even overplaying?
No, I think you're 100% correct. I think the real tough thing about these sports and tennis in particular, because of how physical it is as well, is the relentlessness of point after point. And if you're nervous, you have to fight through those nerves sometimes for an hour. and they might disappear for a while, but then suddenly you're 5-all and it's tight again, and you're feeling very tight, and you have to manage it over and over again. And I think the best players in the world just use their tools and remember to use their tools in big moments. Because once you get to pro level, it's not like any player doesn't kind of know what they have to do, but it's in the heat of that moment that they either don't remember because the brain is frying a little bit, or they don't have the courage to use them.
Yeah.
So, for us sitting there, I remember when Roger Federer had 2 match points against Novak at Wimbledon serving.
Yeah.
You're thinking serve and volley both.
Okay.
Yeah, probably Novak's not going to make a great return on both.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know whether what Roger was thinking, or maybe knew something more than that I did, but that was my thinking. But he didn't, and they slipped through his hands. Now to do that though in that moment takes a huge amount of courage.
Yeah.
And first to make the decision, and then secondly to follow through the decision like that. But then you've always got, and this is what's so tough for players, the other thing is, match point, make the person play. Don't serve and give them a quick volley or whatever. And that's another school of thought. But I think deep down, players get to a place where they have an instinct. And I think, I say this over and over again, the best players in the world are the most relaxed and the bravest. Because in those moments, when their instinct is telling them something, they are brave enough to follow it. And which is why, and again, it doesn't guarantee you're going to win, but I do think it starts to push the odds more in your favor. I'll just say one other thing is,
yeah,
I don't know if anybody's ever been go-karting or any kind of motor racing or watches motor racing,
mm-hmm.
but when a driver gets in the groove, they lap like within 0.1 of a second every lap, like in this unbelievable groove.
Mm-hmm.
But if they lose that groove, when they're in that groove, it seems so easy. Just do it. It's like no hassle. But if they lose that groove, if they go a little too fast, then they slide out of a corner, they lose time. If they go a little too slow, then that's not effective. And the margins are so small to stay on that groove. And for players as well, when you go into something like the French Open or any tournament, but especially the big ones, you hope that you can get through that first match and find a groove. And if you get in that groove, then that gives you your best chances of winning, because then most stuff is happening automatically, which is the most effective. Everybody has a problem when they start to think on the court, and automatic is fastest and easiest because you know how to do things. And it's not like you don't register. I say when you're playing very well, you are aware of everything, but nothing distracts you. When you start to think, your thoughts start to distract you, and that's very difficult to manage. And if you can learn how to manage that and get yourself back in the groove a little faster, then than other players. That's obviously, helps with ranking and why certain players, are more consistent than others, because they tend to manage that better. I hope that makes sense anyway.
It does. It definitely does. Can you just tell us now, back to the present, what's the plan for the next 48 hours? Bearing in mind Liam may play on Monday or Tuesday. Are you still practicing tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow practice once at 11.
Uh-huh.
And hopefully it's just that once. If there was something that was bothering him, then we'd go out and practice a little bit more, just him and I, maybe work on a few little things. But if he feels good tomorrow, then he'll just have that one practice and then relax the rest of the day, have a massage and really just try and stay as relaxed as possible for the next day. And obviously every first match of any tournament is, nervous. Everybody's very nervous. Mm-hmm. Everybody's in the same boat. Mm-hmm. And you just hope that, if you can get off to a decent start, and as I said, find that groove as fast as possible, then I think you have a really good chance. If you don't find that groove, then it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. If Liam's Paris experience finishes, let's say, at some point in the next 7 days, and he's 100% fit physically, is there anything on the, because we're basically done with clay, I think now, right?
Yeah.
Would he even switch to grass even sooner than maybe you might expect?
Oh yeah, I mean, as soon as we're done in Paris, it's straight over and practicing on the grass and getting ready on the grass. I mean, you'll leave and the next day you're gonna get on the grass and
I mean, you can almost get a head start on your opponents in a way. I mean, if you just don't know. I mean, we saw, as I say, with Struff doing incredibly in Madrid, and Struff, by the way, would be very dangerous on grass too. Struff would be in a quarterfinal at the French, and he could be a first-round opponent for Liam, a week later somewhere else. But if Liam's had a week longer on the grass, that might give him a tiny advantage.
Yeah, I think, whatever happens, I mean, I always say nothing bad comes from winning.
Yeah.
So you want to go as far as you can. I mean, nothing beats winning. And the further you go in this tournament, I think that's going to help your grass court season more than anything. But yeah, sure, if you do happen to lose early, then you really got to just put it out your mind, the old goldfish, and get ready for a new surface that you can do very well on, and look forward. Looking back just to maybe learn a couple of lessons is important, but then immediately as a tennis player, you have to be looking forward.
Yeah, indeed. Well, David, we've taken a bit longer.
And I'd just like to say, I see the messages flashing up. Thanks very much for listening. Those of you who put messages in, that's much appreciated. I do read them as they flash along the screen. And Phil Jackson, I do like his coaching method.
Okay, interesting. I didn't. Okay, gotcha.
Somebody flash one.
No, that's cool. All right, David. Listen, we've taken a few more minutes of your time anyway, so you enjoy what's left of the evening in Paris, and we'll be watching Liam with great interest over the next few days.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we just play out with our usual drill, which is to remind everyone to do this. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.